and she literally takes the guy she likes to the concert of this couple that she is stalking because she's interested in the man. The secondhand embarrassment is phenomenal, I gotta say. Guys, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more book related content. I also like to talk about music, mostly Taylor Swift. Today I really wanted to discuss a book that I recently read that I had no plan of making a review over, but I just started to feel a lot of things, a lot of opinions. I ended up picking this book up while looking through a ton of like OCD and anxiety self-help books at my library. I also wanted some books that just had characters who have OCD, and I wanted to see representation. This cover is really ugly, first of all. Also, I'm not going to include spoilers in this video until the very end. There will be a timestamp section. This is just going to be a bunch of notes I wrote down about this book and kind of my review. Not in a super organized format. I'm just going to be talking about the book and what I thought. And I also need some opinions from you guys. I have a lot of things to say, you know? There were things that I really did not like about this book, and then there were other things that I really enjoyed. The very first note I wrote down literally says, there is a character named Cooter. I almost did a double take when I read this on the page. Okay, in my mind, as I kept reading it after that, I just kept saying it as Cooper, because Cooter, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You know, the initial impression of this book that you get just can't get any worse, but then it does. So the cover's awful. It literally says like, I will not stalk him, or I will not stalk that boy, or whatever it is it says. It's that awful pink yellow color combo. Right when you start reading the book, the character Bia, she's just immediately unlikable, and you find yourself just like cringing at the prose, if you will. She pretty much is at this school dance. That's how the book starts off, and she's like criticizing the music because it's like too mainstream, and she says like the songs are so bad but everybody else loves them, and like it's just very N-log energy, you know what I mean? She also just like generalizes cheerleaders to be people who have EDs and looks down on them for that, when like, girl, you literally have your own mental health struggles. Like it's not some kind of competition of which one's more desirable. She also calls her friend eating dinner as a binge, and her friend is a ballerina who is likely dealing with that kind of body toxicity. It's honestly really disappointing to see this. I almost put this book down after the first few chapters, and then what really just drove the last nail into the coffin for me was when she says she is jealous of anxious people who were abused because then they know why they are crazy. Okay, I know this is her internal monologue. It's not like she's saying these things out loud. She even says like, at the risk of me sounding terrible for this thought or whatever, but like, how do you come back from that, especially in the reader's eye? You are jealous of anxious people who were abused because then they know why they are crazy. However, this character Bia does get a little more likable as time goes on. She shows some character development, luckily. She starts out terribly unlikable, but then by the end, I mean, it's still pretty bad, but like, it's better. So this book, as I said, was published in 2013, and it is 100% a product of its time. It's hard to enjoy some of the writing style because it is now cringe and like looked down upon to be referring to yourself as quirky in an unironic way. I think she was specifically calling herself like not crazy, but having a few quirks. Moving on. So it starts off with Bee meeting this guy, his name is Beck, at this school dance, and she pretty much calms him down from having a panic attack when there's a power outage during the dance. And it's kind of a cute romantic moment because she ends up kissing him like while the power's still out, and then they end up breaking away from each other before the lights come back on. So like, she meets this guy and she has this nice conversation with him, calms him down, kisses him, and like never knows what he looks like. I think that's a really cool concept. So then we see Bee going to therapy, where we first see her compulsive note-taking happening concerning the couple who has therapy before her. So this is where the whole stalking thing comes in. She's writing down everything she hears from this couple's session in her notebook, and this couple is pretty much a fixation for her that she obsesses over, which I've never heard of that kind of manifestation of OCD, but you know, everybody's got something different. So she overhears their sessions, she writes all of these notes down about everything she hears that is said, and then she ends up following them home this next time. I guess she's been doing this for a while, but this is the first time we see it as a reader. She ends up following them home to check on them because she has this intrusive thought thinking that something bad will happen to them if she doesn't make sure they get home. But she also definitely has a fixation more on the man than the woman. And this is a 16-year-old girl. We don't know that she's 16 seen until later, but it does say she's in high school. And like, this is like people that are like in their 30s, I guess, and she's interested in this man, and he's married, and he's like 15 years older than her. So she goes into her therapy session after them, and her therapist diagnoses her with OCD pretty quickly in the book. I think it's like the 4th or 5th chapter. Up to this point, we as readers did see that she was struggling with driving. She had the issue of thinking that she must have ran someone over or hit somebody as she was driving and didn't feel it or didn't know, and so she has to turn around and check multiple times and just generally feels really anxious driving. The obsessive note taking, we do see hints that she has OCD, but then this is when her therapist actually diagnoses her, and she tells B that she should come to group therapy sessions where other people with OCD will be there, and they can all just kind of like support each other, even though they all have different variations of OCD. I think there are 7 different types is what I read in some other like self-help book. So she ends up going to these group therapy sessions, and she sees this muscular boy who is also in the therapy session, and she just knows by his like build, because she like felt his arm in the dark, that this is the boy that she kissed, and she knew his first name, and when he introduces himself and she introduces herself, they both just immediately know. Okay, so I wanted to talk more about the stalking, especially because the other reviews that I've read on this book and how they perceive this, the stalking gets worse. She keeps coming to the building that the couple lives in. Their names are Austin and Sylvia, and she ends up even interacting with Sylvia when Sylvia comes outside of the apartment complex to smoke, and she even develops a bad habit of smoking herself just so she can like take one from Sylvia and make small talk with her and like get closer to these people. It's definitely creepy and wrong. We see a whole backstory of how she was stalking her ex-boyfriend who had dumped her because he found her notebook that was like filled with these true crime stories about somebody who was like a perfectly normal kid who ended up suddenly killing someone with no warning, and she mentally like puts herself in these positions like, oh, if this person that acted all sweet and innocent can do it, why shouldn't I be able to do that sort of thing? She pretty much views herself as like this ticking time bomb, so that's why she has these sorts of obsessions. But she ended up stalking her ex-boyfriend. She ended up getting some sort of like light restraining order on her that was going to expire when she turns 18. The boy's parents were just really freaked out by this, but they didn't want it to follow her into adulthood. Many reviewers have criticized this book for making Bia a stalker, and they say like, well, that's not OCD. There are so many different ways OCD can manifest. Like, just because someone is not having the exact same experience as you are with the same sort of issue, it doesn't make it any less valid. She has these intrusive thoughts, and then she compulses by pinching her thigh until it's bruised. That is like textbook definition. There's the whole driving thing where she can't stop turning the car around to check that she hasn't hit someone. That is also very textbook. That's like one of the most common forms. I feel like there's people who literally go to therapy and like get stuff for their specific situation, but don't ever read into how it could work for other people, maybe. I don't know. However, I also think the way we view stalkers as a society is very negatively, especially in the case of like a man stalking a woman, because of the things that that can lead to. Like, it's a huge safety issue. It's not just somebody like looking in your window or parked outside on your street. It 100% can escalate into something terrible. But like, I don't know, I think maybe this is a compulsion. I'm still trying to figure that out, but I think we got to give her a little more leeway because she is a minor. In my opinion, I was more like, where are the parents? I wasn't like, oh my god, this is a terrible person. Like, she's 16. That part's a little more forgivable to me as a character flaw, I guess. Her entire internal monologue and way she judges people is a lot more frustrating to me, but we're gonna get into that. She's never hurt anyone physically or even broken into anyone's home. She tries to just kind of like get closer to them, but she's also a child who is stalking grown adults. So it's like, where are the parents? Why does she even have access to a car? That's such a waste of gas. I don't think she has a job. Yeah, I don't think she went to a job a single time. Like, I don't know. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think it definitely sucks that there are some kids who have parents who would never let them go to therapy when they desperately need it. But also there's like really shitty parents who just kind of throw their child off to a therapist and just don't do anything proactive, like actually parenting their kid. They just kind of view the therapist as a babysitter. And I do agree that it sucks that B walked into this group therapy session on the first day and was immediately judging the kid who picked at his skin, but that was his compulsion. Like, anytime he had intrusive thoughts or anxiety, he would pick at his skin. There was also a girl who would pull her hair out, and she immediately is judging these people just because of their physical appearance, when like, show us the bruise on your thigh, you know what I mean? Like, just because yours is more hidden, that doesn't make you superior. It is from B's point of view, so we unfortunately are just going to get that bias. People were really mad about that. I don't know, maybe people need some kind of like disclaimer that this character is just unlikable. I don't think the author author's condoning any of this behavior. Like, I think she's literally just making this character as like a shithead, you know? Like, just because a character is bad, it doesn't mean that the author is saying like this is how people should act. But on the other hand, I do see why people have been criticizing this, because there are not a lot of books with characters who have OCD. There should be more books with characters who have OCD, who are likable and they treat every form of OCD fairly, and they don't judge others for how it manifests, and they're just like moral people, I guess. If you have insecurities about your compulsions, especially if they're more physically obvious, this probably isn't the book for you. B's kind of a piece of shit, I don't know what to tell you. But there is kind of like a subtle realization for her when she really spirals into the most severe her symptoms have ever been, and she kind of realizes that she is no better than the other people who have different compulsions to her, who she previously looked down upon. I also want to talk about the ending. I don't think this is that much of a spoiler. With these kinds of books, it's like you have to see the character develop and like overcome their symptoms to an extent. A lot of this video is just me kind of responding to all the reviews I've seen on Goodreads. But basically, I've noticed how people were criticizing the ending because she like got better too fast. But personally, I view the ending chapter as kind of a time jump. Like, I don't know exactly how long it is, but I was getting that impression that some time has passed since the chapter beforehand. But definitely there are people who can really dedicate themselves to exposure therapy who do end up getting better pretty quickly. Like within a couple of weeks, they're like doing a lot better off. Just from what I've read, I haven't had that experience. Exposure therapy has something like a 90% success rate, I think it is. And it's been said that it's easier to overcome symptoms of OCD than it is to quit smoking or to lose weight and keep it off. Like, the chance of relapse is lower than those two things. So I think that's pretty impressive. But anyways, like, this could happen. You know, I see this as something that's realistic. And also, people with actual like severe OCD, they're using up like 8+ hours of their time to compulse. And we see B maybe using up like 2 to 3 hours or something, because she's able to attend school completely by day. Like, her OCD doesn't get in the way that much. So based on what I've read, I feel like she would be diagnosed with either mild or moderate OCD. It would not be severe. I feel like if it was severe, it would take longer for sure. I don't know, I could definitely see her improving quickly if she dedicated herself enough to it. And she still does have issues displayed in the last chapter. Like, she has to resist a lot of things. Okay, I'm gonna do like an overall kind of review of what I thought of this book, and then I'll go into the spoiler section. But overall, I did rate this a 3 out of 5 stars, because I don't know if I dislike this book or I like it. It's frustrating. I really want to hear your guys' opinions if you've read this book. I liked seeing an actual character who has the sort of symptoms that I've been reading about in self-help books for a while now. It's nice to see like a fleshed out example of that, I guess. It was definitely entertaining, I gotta say. You know, I was not bored, I was turning pages, so that's good. It's definitely an entertaining book, but is it like a good representation of someone who has OCD? That's the big question, and I think that's an answer that's just gonna vary from person to person. It is hard to find a book with characters with OCD in it though, so if there was more to choose from, I don't know if I'd even classify this as that good of a representation, but it's like, it's what we got, you know, like this is just what we have right now, and it's not terrible. And it's pretty impressive to me that a book that has this uncomfortable of a narrator and is just like kind of unlikable and offensive is not terrible. It could have just been a lot worse, especially like the second half. It was still pretty bad, but just like, you don't usually see that. Yeah, I guess that's why I'm giving it a 3 stars. It's literally just because like it's not terrible, and it should have been based on all of the like ingredients that made up this book as a whole. I need to get into these spoilers here. Okay, Beck is obsessed with working out. I think he works out like 8 times a day. He definitely is taking up probably like 5, 6, 7 hours for this compulsion. He washes his hands an extreme amount, and he does everything in groups of 8s because his sister died at age 8. I knew that before it was even gonna come out of his mouth. I just had a feeling. Also, more on B, I was expecting her backstory to involve SA. I can't say the full words that those 2 letters stand for because YouTube's gonna demonetize me. But she mentions this older guy, Jeff, who is friends with Cooter, who is her best friend's brother, and she ends up really liking this guy, and she talks about how this guy is like a little bit older than her while she's a teenager, and they end up hitting it off. And I'm like, I don't like where this is going. But it ends up she actually witnessed this guy stabbing a security guard with a broken bottle, and that was completely unexpected. I was not expecting that at all. I really was 100% thinking this was gonna be trauma from SA. It also really made sense because it turns out that this guy was actually very sweet and a really nice person, and the way she kind of gave hints in thinking about him, made it sound like something really bad happened, but it turns out she does think well of this guy, and it just shocked her so much that she thought, oh, I'm gonna become like him because I'm also normal and nice to people, so therefore, she's not really nice to people, but anyways, she thinks she's just going to become the same way. Okay, now I gotta talk about the best friend, Leisha. It's really hinted at that she has an ED, and also B's really judgmental about that. She like refers to her eating as binges, as I said earlier, and that's disgusting. But on the other hand, she also seems incredibly neurotypical and just really judgmental about the way B acts, but it's also like maybe she has her best interests at heart. If you're watching the spoiler section, you haven't read the book and you want to know what happens, B ends up taking Beck to this concert, and the concert is actually done by the couple that she likes to stalk. So it's Austin and Sylvia. They are actually musicians, they perform, and she literally takes the guy she likes to the concert of this couple that she is stalking because she's interested in the man. The secondhand embarrassment is phenomenal, I gotta say. So Beck gets mad at B when he finds out that she's literally just using him to like compulse, I guess, to like check on them or something, and that it's not a band that she actually has an interest in. It's literally just like the couple who has therapy before her who she can't stop stalking. So Beck leaves and he's mad, even though B's enabled his compulsions before. Is this toxic? This sounds toxic. So it's kind of like a double standard, like she can enable his compulsions, but whenever she wants him to do the same, he doesn't, but it's also like, that's not healthy. So Leisha, the best friend, has B's notebook, the notebook where she takes all of those notes about what she hears that couple saying in therapy, and she takes B's notebook and she gives it to Austin and Sylvia. So Austin ends up reading all of the notes that she took on him and Sylvia's therapy sessions, and B eventually shows up at their apartment again, and she doesn't know any of this. Leisha still hasn't told her what she did, so she's just thrown her in the deep end here. I don't know if this is a good thing or not. Leisha ends up writing a letter to B and like kind of apologizes for it, but says it was with her best interests at heart. So I don't know how to feel about that. Is that bad? Is that good? How else do you get someone like that to stop? I guess if their parents not going to do anything. It sucks that the best friend has to step in. What the heck? They're both 16. This book has me feeling things. So B shows up at their apartment again eventually, and Sylvia just invites her in. She like says to the doorman like, yeah, bring her up. I'm like about to piss my pants at this point. Sylvia just says like, take a look around, and B walks into their apartment and just like snoops around, and Sylvia just lets her. B just walks around and looks at all the stuff. She walks into their bedroom and finds that it's just like full of mirrors. Like they love to look at themselves, it's assumed. Like she realizes that this couple is just as obsessed with themselves as B is with them, and they almost like it. So Austin finally shows up from wherever he was. They're talking to her, and it's almost like they're literally enjoying this, and it's just like, it's throwing me for a loop, man. And this is when it's revealed to the reader that they have the notebook. Like Austin suddenly just pulls it out, and here comes Dr. Pat around the corner, who they contacted. This is the same therapist for all three of these people. She just comes around the corner and like sees B, and it's just like a whole gotcha moment, and they reveal that they gave the notebook to Dr. Pat. It's just like this weird climax confrontation sort of scene. It's just horribly secondhand embarrassing. Then Dr. Pat ends up going to B's house, and she makes B throw all of her compulsive notebooks with like articles of true crime and all of the notes she's taken on strangers' conversations. She makes her throw them into the fireplace, and that's pretty much how it ends. It's like she tosses all these things into the fire, decides she's going to make an effort to get better, and then there's kind of just like a jump forward, as I talked about earlier. That's my little book rant. What is this book? What is this book? So let me know what you thought of this book if you read it. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to review. I kind of was always planning on doing like reading vlogs. If you have any recommendations for books that have really good representations of characters who have OCD, that are not judgmental and weird and like stalkerish. I don't know, the stalking could be like a manifestation of some other kind of mental issue maybe. I don't know, but Dr. Pat should have talked about that though. I'd like to know, is stalking an actual thing that happens with people who have OCD? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. I will see you all soon for another video, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye guys.